Good morning. Thank you so much for coming and to be here and to share with us the debriefing on the outcomes of the 24th plenary meeting of BEREC. My name is Fatima Barros. I'm the head of the Portuguese National Authority, Regulatory Authority, and this year I'm also the chair of BEREC. And nearby I have Pedro Ferreira, who is this year also the chair of the Contact Network, and Laszlo Ignazzi, who is the administrative manager of the BEREC office, and Antonello Di Tommaso, who is from Agicom and is here today on his role as co-chair of the Regulatory Framework Expert Working Group, and Fabio also from the BEREC office. As you know, we have this tradition that after each plenary we do a public presentation of the outcomes of our meeting. In order to increase transparency, we now have this debriefing video streaming, which means that people can interact and ask questions via Twitter, or also via email through berec.europa.eu. What I would like to start to tell you, do you mind? Oh, sorry, is about our agenda. So first of all, I would like to start by giving you a brief description of what were the main results of the BEREC plenary workshops that were run on 13th September, so just before starting the plenary of BEREC, and also the main results from the BEREC plenary, and to give some insight on the BEREC work program, the draft, because it's right now under public consultation, and talk to you briefly about the BEREC next meetings. And finally, I will ask Antonello to give us a more detailed explanation on what are the current works in BEREC on the opinion that request of the European Commission on the next framework review. Of course, we'll have our time for Q&A, and we'll have the opportunity to exchange some views. I would like to start by telling you a quite interesting workshop we had, and it's not the regular activities we have in BEREC. In fact, Vice President Ansip invited me as chair of BEREC, and also the ERGP chair, so you know the group for postal services, he invited us for a meeting and to discuss some issues that are related to some problems that were identified in cross-border parcels delivery. And you know, part of on the DSM strategy, one of the actions that is considered very important is the development of e-commerce, cross-border e-commerce. And it was identified that one of the issues that can somehow be a barrier to the development of cross-border e-commerce is the cross-border parcels delivery, issues related to prices, transparency, and other issues. So the Vice President Ansip considered that could be interesting to get the two groups of regulators working together on this issue and sharing some best practices from the electronic communications sector to the postal services sector. So the result was that we decided to create a joint working group with on one side the BEREC expert working group, and also a working group designed by the RGP. And this joint working group is now working together in order to advise the European Commission in order to accomplish the two following tasks. First, identify the powers that NRAs must hold to monitor and intervene regarding price transparency and somehow promote regulatory oversight on cross-border parcels delivery. One of the problems that was identified, I don't know if you are aware of this, but it's quite interesting, is that suppose that you have two countries like Denmark and Sweden. You can have the price of the same parcel from one side to the other one, let's say from Sweden to Denmark to be one price, and on the other direction, on the other sense, it can be totally different. Half the price or double the price or even more. So this means that there are some questions related to prices that must be solved, and we believe that increasing price transparency will put some pressure in terms of competition, and therefore we can help to solve this problem. Another issue that is related to outline specific measures or policy options that should be created by the European Commission to tackle the existing problems that were identified in this market. So we organized this plenary workshop that was focused on price transparency and regulatory oversight regarding this cross-border parcels delivery. We had a presentation of the European Commission on the initiatives that were already in place for the digital single market strategy regarding this issue. We presented a discussion paper that was prepared by the joint working group. And finally, we had a roundtable discussion involving the heads of NRAs. As you might know, many of these NRAs have double hats, so they are responsible for electronic communications, but also for postal services. But in some cases, when they don't have the double role, we invited the national authority responsible for postal services. So we had a very interesting roundtable discussion, and finally the results could be resumed like these ones. So in what regards the price transparency, the actions to be considered might include, for example, creation of platforms for distribution services, because, you know, many of these parcels are part of the SMEs and startups retail activity. And they don't have the negotiation power in many cases to have competitive prices. It's not the same of the big retailers that can, in fact, negotiate. So we believe that the creation of these platforms can somehow aggregate all these smaller businesses and give them more power to negotiate in terms of the prices of cross-border parcels. Also, the creation of price comparison websites. Again, we believe that more transparency can increase the competition. The design of incentives to improve and implement track and trace systems. This is very important because the trust of consumers on e-commerce is pretty much dependent on their capacity to follow the package of the parcel. So this means that if you are a small company, probably you don't have enough means to invest in a track and trace system that are rather expensive. So we can think about systems that could give more incentives for these companies to get to accede to these systems. And also the conception of a scoreboard on the prices and delivery on the prices, delivery quality, and in this can somehow improve the quality of service. In what regards the regulatory oversight, we believe there is a need for measures to monitor cross-border parcels, namely harmonization and creation of guidelines for the benchmarking and monitoring exercises regarding the cross-border parcels delivery. There is not much information about what's going on in the markets. That's why we need to harmonize guidelines. Also, the definition of a clear statistical framework to enable NRAs to collect relevant data on this market. Part of this activity is out of the scope of regulation, so it's very difficult for NRAs to gather information on these issues. Also, regular benchmarking of quality of service indicators, end user complaints, and customer satisfaction indexes. We believe also that should be more cooperation between NRAs, competition authorities, consumer protection bodies, retailers, and all operators to create and monitor relevant core indicators. So, you see, this is an issue that is not in the core of our regular activities. However, there is a strong relationship, and in some cases, NRAs also have some responsibilities on e-commerce, and it makes sense to collaborate with the postal services authorities. So the joint working group is supposed to produce an opinion to be approved in the next BEREC plenary in December in London. The second plenary workshop that took place the same day was related to migration to all IP networks. As you know, this is a very important issue, so we have been discussing this issue at two levels. First, there were some cases that were presented, namely the cases of Italy, Switzerland, and Croatia. Each country presented the current status of the process to migration to all IP networks. And the second half of the workshop was focused on the discussion about what would be the opinion that BEREC will give to the Commission under this review of the regulatory framework. Finally, going into our core issues that are the outcomes of the BEREC plenary, well, as you know, and it's usual, we have several documents that were approved for publication. Some of them are not new for you because they were already under public consultation. The first one was the common characteristics of Layer 2 wholesale access products in the EU, and the draft BEREC report on common characteristics of Layer 2 WAP in the EU. It's not, these are very technical reports, as you know, and they were approved for public consultation. This public consultation, they were approved for publication. The public consultation ran through the summer, and we received many contributions to the report, and you can now find the responses of BEREC to these comments. We also have the draft BEREC International Roaming Benchmarking Report that covers the period between October 2014 and March 2015. This is, again, a regular report that we do, and it's about gathering data on European international roaming services. And there is nothing very special, maybe just to tell you that the regulatory framework that applies for this data collection is the Roaming 3 regulation. And as you know, in the future we'll have new rules for roaming, so this is probably something that will change quickly, but right now you can find also the published report on the international roaming. Finally, we have the documents that were approved for public consultation. And the most important one, probably the one that you are most curious about, is the draft BEREC work program for 2016. As usual, we approved the draft work program for BEREC in the third plenary. Then we approved it for public consultation. The public consultation runs from 8th of October to 30th of October, and we'll have an oral hearing in Brussels on the 15th October during the Stakeholders Forum that, as you know, will be next week. So this will give the opportunity for stakeholders to have a voice and to discuss with us the draft of the BEREC work program. And of course, there is still the public consultation that will run till the end of the month. Another draft report that was approved for public consultation is one that is on enabling Internet of Things. Somehow this is a report that we have been working on for quite a long period, I would say. This draft report presents the outcome of a BEREC questionnaire on the state of play on M2M services by defining the most common M2M characteristics and assessing when M2M services must require special treatment with regard to current and potential future regulatory issues. Well, it contains several proposals that somehow aim to create a more favorable environment to enhance competition, all the while ensuring interoperability of electronic communication services in the future use of M2M, and also providing consumers more benefits while assessing in more detail several issues regarding M2M solutions that are based on mobile networks. And I'm sure that this is one issue that will be very important in the future, and we must work very seriously on these issues. The public consultation will be in place from 5 October to 6 November, and there will be also an oral hearing in Brussels. So we consider that this topic is very important, and we chose to discuss this with the stakeholders in the next stakeholder forum next week. Another report that is also interesting is the draft BEREC report on OTT services. As you know, there is a lot of discussion now with the review of the regulatory framework on OTT services, and so the most important thing is to provide for BEREC is to provide an analysis of OTT services, their definition, and their impact on the regulatory framework for electronic communications in both areas, competition and consumer protection. In this report, BEREC defines an OTT service as content, a service or an application that is provided to the end user over the open internet. This provision of service occurs independently of the internet access provider in control of the distribution of the service. And BEREC distinguishes three types of OTTs. We have OTT 0 services, OTT 1, and OTT 2. So the OTT 0 services are OTT services that qualify as ECS, so electronic communication services. OTT 1 services are OTT services that do not qualify as ECS, but do potentially compete with electronic communication services. And finally, OTT2 services are the remaining category consisting of OTT services that are not an ECS and do not potentially compete with ECS. So we have now 3 categories of OTT services, and we try to understand the impact they have in terms of competition and in terms of needs for consumer protection. And this report is now available for public consultation, so everybody can comment the report. And the public consultation runs from 5 October to 2 November. And again, there will be an oral hearing in Brussels during the Stakeholders Forum. So we'll have the opportunity to discuss this issue as well. Finally, another report that was published for public consultation is a report on equivalent access and choice for disabled end users. As you know, this is a very important issue in BEREC in what concerns the protection of disabled end users. And this report follows somehow a previous work that was published in February 2011, as well as 2 public workshops that were conducted, the first one in October 2013, the second one already this year, March 2015, and where we have invited many stakeholders, representatives of consumers with special needs to express their views on these issues. The report reflects the discussions that took place at both of these workshops and, of course, takes into account the views of the stakeholders. We also had a questionnaire that BEREC conducted among all NRAs to assess how the issues of access and choice for disabled end users are dealt with across Europe. So this is also a way to have a picture of how we are dealing with these issues across Europe. And the public consultation on this report will run from the 2nd of October to the 13th of October. All these documents are available at the BEREC website, and of course we invite all of you to express your opinions on these documents. And what is probably most important is what regards the next year's BEREC work program. As you might understand, we have 3 main priorities, but the most relevant one will be for sure the review of the next regulatory framework. We are already working quite intensively in this issue. We were requested by the European Commission to give an opinion on many questions that were addressed and that regard the review of the framework. NRAs were also asked to do a refit exercise in order to assess the implementation of the current regulatory framework. So this is a very intense work that has been conducted by BEREC, but also involving the NRAs and expert working groups. We also have, you see that many of these issues that have been discussed, that we have been discussing during this year, like the draft report on oligopolies analysis, on spectrum, on OTTs, and somehow universal service as well, are already discussions that have as main objective to help us to answer to these questions. A second priority is the follow-up of TSM. As you know, I hope that very briefly the regulation on net neutrality and international roaming will be approved by the European Parliament. And then BEREC will have some responsibilities. Namely, we will, according to the regulation, we should define net neutrality guidelines. And we also must, as BEREC, to give inputs on roaming, particularly in what regards the Commission's implementation acts on fair use policy and sustainability of the abolition of retail roaming surcharges, and also on the wholesale market review. So I can tell you that this is a very important work for BEREC. So BEREC is actively participating in the definition of guidelines that will somehow define the way these two important areas will evolve in the future. So the guidelines for net neutrality that are rather complex and are now under discussion with the experts at the level of working groups in BEREC, and also the definition of what will be the analysis of the wholesale market review that is crucial for the implementation of Roam Like at Home, and also giving the Commission the information that will be essential for the definition of the fair use policy. That, as you know, is one also some critical issue in the definition of the Roam Like at Home. So on what concerns BEREC, we understand this is very heavy work, but at the same time is also the possibility for BEREC to have an active role in the definition of issues that will be crucial for the development of the markets in the European Union. As a third priority, we have the multi-annual activities and other deliverables that are the usual works that we do every year. But probably I would like to highlight the benchmarking report on mobile termination rates, fixed termination rates, and SMS, and also some other an important maybe to highlight a workshop on the implementation of the Cost Reduction Directive, and also a report on the qualitative review of Article 7 and 7A cases. This is also very important to do the assessment of what we are doing in terms of regulation. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I don't know if I told you, but I arrived this morning from Washington, so this air conditioning in the planes don't help much. But I will try to finish the presentation. So I'd say that thank you, Pedro. I would say that the main topics for next year will be, without any doubt, the review of the regulatory framework. As you might understand, we are now discussing the regulation that will be in place in 2020, which means that somehow we must try to understand which type of bottlenecks will we face by that time, and try to find the right directions for regulation in the next 2 years, more or less, which is a quite challenging task. The follow-up on TSM will be also very important, as you understand, and it's also complex. These are complex issues from the technical point of view. So I can tell you that next year will be a very busy year for BEREC. So we will approve we approved for public consultation the work program last week. Now it's under public consultation. On the 15th of October, we will have an open discussion in the stakeholders forum. And finally, we'll have in the fourth plenary the final approval of the BEREC working program 2016 and the consultation report. I hope that again that you all will be there next week to discuss with us what we thought that are really the most important issues to be dealt by BEREC next year. So now we also have an exchange of views, and this was a very important moment in the plenary. This was a moment where the heads have discussed in an open way some issues related to the preparation of BEREC opinion on the next framework review. And Antonio will give you an overview what was the main results of the discussion later on. We also approved many other issues and administrative matters that I don't think are very interesting, but probably what I can go quickly is through the next BEREC meeting. So we have already talked about the Stakeholders Forum on the 15th of October. Then we'll have the Contact Network meeting on the 19th, 20th of November. As you know, these Contact Networks meetings are very important because this is where we do all the preparation work for the plenaries. And finally, the BEREC Board of Regulators will meet, as well as the Management Committee will meet in London for the plenary. Fabio. Okay. I think I've already told you that we expect many people for the Stakeholders Forum. We have 170 participants registered, which means that it's probably the largest participation we had since ever in this fully open to the public meeting. And with this meeting, what we really want is to have a dialogue with the stakeholders. We want this forum to be an opportunity for regulators to hear directly from the stakeholders their opinions on many important issues. At a time where we are still able to incorporate some of the suggestions in our works and our reports. So in order to enlarge the possibility of participation, the Stakeholders Forum will be also video streaming, so everybody will have access to the forum, and also the people will have the opportunity to provide feedback or questions to the speakers through the official BEREC accounts in the social media. Just a last remark on the afternoon sessions. The afternoon sessions will be a bit different from what is usual. In the past, we had the representatives of associations like Ethno, ECTA, the Cable Association. This time, we decided to have a slightly different model and to invite representatives for different areas to discuss matters relating to the digital ecosystem. And so we try to invite high-level people from outside Europe in some cases, because when we choose someone in Europe, you know, there is always the problem, why did you choose A instead of B or C or D? So we decided to bring people from outside Europe to avoid some of these problems, but at the same time to bring new ideas that will help us to discuss what will be the matters, the challenging matters on the digital ecosystem. And in particular, this discussion is very important when we are starting the review of the regulatory framework, when the Commission launched the DSM strategy. So we want really to have an open debate with our European stakeholders and bringing guests with different overviews. Well, and we'll have a networking cocktail as well, so this is something that I should announce. It's important. All right, so now, Fabio, is it time for me to open the floor for questions, or shall Antonello and Laszlo
first, and then
okay, now I will give the floor to Laszlo, and he will give you some ideas on what's going on. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, I am Laszlo Ignazzi. I am the administrative manager of the BEREC office. The governing body of the BEREC office is the management committee, and the management committee had this its plenary meeting side by side with the board of regulators, as it was just explained by the chair. The management committee meeting was on the 2nd of October, on Friday. During that meeting, I presented the usual quarterly report to the management committee on the operation and on the budget execution of the BEREC office. You know, the role of the BEREC office is to provide support, administrative and professional support to BEREC in implementation of its work program. The management committee adopted 3 decisions in administrative proceedings, one on staff-related implementing rules, another one on establishing reserve lists as 2 recruitment procedures were completed, and the third one on appointing reporting officers on annual appraisal exercise. So these are the administrative tasks what the management committee shall fulfill formally during its meetings. Also, the management committee amended the related decision on the reimbursement of travel expenses of the experts that are usually traveling for the expert working groups that drafts the BEREC documents later on. There is one more element what I would like to highlight that was not on the agenda of the formal meeting of the management committee, but it is very important. Every year, the management committee shall adopt the annual work program of the following year for the BEREC office before the 30th of September. As the meeting was held on the 2nd of October, this adoption was done in an electronic clearance procedure. So now the BEREC office work program is adopted by the management committee. That was done before the 30th of September, and it identifies the necessary financial and human resources to provide the necessary capacity for supporting the BEREC activities that will be further specified in the work program that will be adopted only in December later this year. So more or less this is what happened during the management committee meeting. Additionally, there were some informations provided also by the vice chair, who is the vice chair with appointing authority powers on the BEREC office. So basically that was the meeting on Friday. If there is any question, I would be happy to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Laszlo. Antonello, would you like to share with us the views?
Thanks, Fatima. Actually, I'm afraid I'm going to frustrate the expectation of the audience, because actually what we have been doing now is getting into the technical analysis of the issue in view of the elaboration of the BEREC opinion and the review. So it's basically a work in progress. What I can share with you for the time being is what we have done so far and the future plans and the planned deadline in order to get to an opinion by the end of the year. As you are aware, actually the process started even earlier than the formal publication of the Commission DSM strategy at the very beginning of the year. We started our informal discussion either internal or with the Commission to frame a little bit the topics that could be covered by the forthcoming review. Then there was the DSM strategy, and the BEREC immediately replied with a high level. It was basically a substantiated press release welcoming the approach from the Commission side, which we feel it's suitable in order to target the new broader range of the problems and possible regulatory needs in the new digital ecosystem. And we have then, before the summer break, received a very detailed set of questions by the Commission. It is basically the way the Commission is requesting the BEREC an opinion, and I can say that it is basically very close and consistent with the Commission approach to the public consultation. We will be basically asked to to provide a common NRA's view regarding the scope of the new framework, issues of access and connectivity, the role of spectrum, universal service, and end-user protection. We will be also requested to provide our views in terms of possible new regulatory needs stemming from the new trends in technologies, and finally also a view in terms of possible future changes in terms of governance and institutional setup. This is something we have been discussing internally at any level. I'm, as Fatima has pointed out, the co-chair of the group, so we are running the technical analysis, but at the same time and in parallel we are also, let's say, discussing as a BEREC at heads level. So the slot that was devoted in Riga was for the purpose to having a high-level steering from the group. As for the next step, we will be expected to deliver by the end of the year. I mean, according to the time schedule that we committed, we will be able to do so. There's still under discussion the way, but for sure there will be a way for BEREC to provide a public evidence on our own common view on the review. Thank you.
Antonello was also in Washington. He's also losing his voice. Now, there was a regulatory forum, a regulators forum conference, and we were there, large representation of BEREC. So, just to tell you that Antonello, as co-chair, as well as the other co-chair and all the members of this expert working group, have a very, very hard job right now, because it's not just expressing an opinion, it's expressing a common opinion. And as you imagine, this means lots of discussions. And I think it's a very, very interesting period for regulation. It's a great opportunity for us to discuss all these issues. But in the end of the day, it's a high responsibility and a very difficult task. But they are doing it very well. So I'm now available to answer any questions that you might have, or also other people that are following us through the video stream.
Don't be shy.
Okay, please.
Good morning. Thanks a lot for your presentation. I'm Aurélie Doutrio from Orange. I have two questions on the TSM follow-up, as you named it. So you were mentioning the net neutrality guidelines that are foreseen by the regulation itself. Could you tell us a bit more whether there will be some kind of stakeholder discussion, consultation on those guidelines, or when will they be issued? First question. And the second one related to roaming, where the regulation is also a bit complex. Usually BEREC adopted some guidelines after each new regulation on roaming. Is it something that BEREC will do with that new regulation, or is it not scheduled? Thanks.
Well, in what regards net neutrality, we have, as soon as the regulation is approved, we have a very tight schedule to issue the guidelines, and of course there will be a public consultation on the guidelines. And the public consultation, according to the schedule, will be somewhere, I don't know, but in the spring, late spring, something around this, I would say. But for sure, as you know, in everything we do, we must do a public consultation. So before delivering the guidelines to the Commission, there will be public consultation. In what concerns the roaming, so we have two main issues, actually three. One is already done, that was related to the termination rates, mobile termination rates, information on what's going on in Europe, the average termination rates was one information that the Commission needed. Now we must help the Commission or give the information to the Commission on the fair use policy, which means again that we must gather information on the different levels of consumption of roaming in the different countries, of roaming and of data consumption, mobile data consumption. And we also have to do a market analysis, or at least to give some inputs for the wholesale market analysis and wholesale market review. And these are probably the two most important things that we must do in terms of the roaming.
Hello, Vasila Gleditschva from MLEX. I have a question related to the Internet of Things report. What tools should regulators be given in the overhaul of the EU telecom framework to be able to manage the regulatory challenges arising from the Internet of Things? Thank you.
This report intended to do, first of all, to understand what was going on in terms of M2M, essentially to identify the main questions, the main issues that we must deal with, and what we have done right now is to send, in our public consultation, a set of questions to stakeholders. And this is the first step that we are in our process to try to identify which shall be the role of regulators in these areas. Of course, that M2M raises many issues that go related to numbering, to spectrum, to permanent roaming. So there are many issues that we must deal with. Some of them are pretty much related to technology. So we also need the industry to participate in this process and to give us more information on this area. And I should say that we are still, trying to understand what should be our way forward. Thank you.
Manuel Braga, Deutsche Telekom. The Commission is currently running two consultations almost in parallel, one framework review, the other one on platforms. You have been vocal and publicly on the need for a convergent framework that tackles also OTT services. The questionnaire for the framework review is very narrow in terms of OTTs and the role of OTTs and impact in telecommunication services. Do you plan, in your common opinion, also to tackle the role of platforms or narrow down to the impact of OTTs in communication services?
Well, you know, one of the questions that has been on the table is mainly in what concerns, if you want, first of all, if we need to update the definition of electronic communication services, and how can we somehow ensure a level playing field for all the players in the market. And this doesn't mean that we want to regulate OTTs. This doesn't mean that we intend to have specific measures. We want to understand the problems, first of all, and we want to understand what are the essential aspects that are crucial to ensure this level playing field. So far what I can tell you is that we have been discussing these issues, and part of our opinion will deal with these type of questions. I don't know, Antonella, do you want to add something?
No, this is just to say, but it's a more general comment, that as you may have seen, the work program for 2016, many of the work stream are reflection around the review, and clearly the analysis we have been doing within the OTT report work stream already in 2015, but the same is for the Internet of Things on the transition to all IP, are clearly coordinated with what we are going to say in the opinion. When it comes to your specific question on platforms, as you may have seen also from our own draft report on the OTT, is one of the most interesting and tricky issues from a purely regulatory perspective. So I think that the contribution you may provide in terms of addressing this from a regulatory perspective will be very useful, because we are certainly about to answer about the scope of the new framework. When it comes to platforms, then according to our own, how can I say, taxonomy, we are speaking about OTT2, and you may have seen that in the report this is still an open issue for discussion, also internally to the BEREC.
Good morning, Francesco Versace from Etno. I have a question on the work stream on oligopolies. I see from the work program that it seems to still to be open to different outcomes. The possible deliverable could be either a follow-up report or an input paper. Could you please elaborate a bit more on these differences?
Well, we are still this document was under this report, this draft report was under consultation, as you know. We don't have the consultation report yet. It will be approved for, it will be presented for approval to the plenary 4, and we must decide on the way forward. As you know, there was many responses, I would say, to our draft report. It was probably one of the reports that had more impact during this year in the market, surprisingly, I would say. And so we will decide what to do after this in the plenary 4, according to, you know, to the result of this consultation report. Let me say that this is an issue that is part of our concerns for the future, of course.
Sorry, if I may have an additional question on this. What's the technical specific difference between a follow-up report and an input paper. An input paper would be part of the common position on the review? Or and the follow-up report, what?
Yes. So the input paper, yes, as you said, it's an input paper for the follow-up report is a follow-up to the current report that is going to be approved by the end of the year. What the work program foresees is a study to be procured by the BEREC office, and that will give us an idea how some cases that are already there can give us direction on the results and the outcomes of those cases of mergers. And but the report will only be ready by the end of the year, I guess. So this is something that because we need time to do the procurement and to the study. So I think this is only foreseen for the last quarter of next year.
Jacques de Grelin at Exis. I have a question regarding the deliverable for the roaming guidelines. You said you delivered something already to the European Commission regarding mobile termination rates. What is this document exactly? Is it advices regarding the conversions of these rates, or?
This is something that was in the regulation. So the idea is that in order to analyze the wholesale market, we must have an idea of what are the mobile termination rates in place in Europe, and therefore we need to give the relevant data to the Commission, and that was the work that we have been done, that were to deliver the average mobile termination rate. No more questions?
Sorry, another question on the report on challenges and drivers of NGA rollout. If I'm not wrong, I think it was expected to be published at the end of this year. And now it's scheduled for after half of 2016. I'm not sure about that, but was there a delay and a specific reason behind it?
I'm not sure, but we will give you an answer very quickly, okay? But I'm not sure if it was in the work plan for this year, for the end of this year, for approval in the end of this year. There are so many reports.
Perhaps one clarification. The average you provided to the European Commission is only about voice. Is that correct?
It's about voice.
So no SMS termination rates. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have, there is a recommendation for termination, mobile termination rates on voice. Any other question? Okay, let's go to the screen. Okay, this is a question that has an answer that is simple and complex at the same time. Simple because, of course, this is a process that is complex, that takes time, and I think that we have been achieving huge improvements in terms of implementing the common framework in Europe among the member states. It's a process that takes some time. It's not easy to just from one day to the other just uniformize or harmonize everything. But I believe that we are in the right path, and so far we have been achieving huge improvements in terms of harmonization. And it's complex because in many cases we must deal with situations, national situations that are particular, that impose some constraints, sometimes impose some constraints on NRAs, on their decision capacity. So it must take some time to achieve the full harmonization in our 28 markets. However, I can say that we are probably we have been doing a great progress in the last few years, and I'm sure that with all these initiatives that we have in place, with the DSM and also with the very intensive activity of BEREC, we are able to share best practices and somehow to adopt common positions that help NRAs to achieve the full implementation of the regulatory framework. Magnus, I hope that I answered to your question. Any other? No. It's too early for journalists. So, no further questions? So I would very much, we very much appreciate that you took your time to come here and to listen to us. I hope that we will meet together next week, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss some issues in an open way. And so thank you so much for coming. Have a nice day.
I know that I'm a little bit out of order, but just to reply to your question. So it's going to be approved at plenary 4 for public consultation, final approval at plenary 2, 2016. The report on the NGN rollout.
Because it's in the work program, I think it says public consultation plenary 2, 2016.
Yes. No, it's going to be a final approved at the plenary 2.
Finally approved at
yes.
plenary 2.
Yes.